Welcome to the 14th season of the NitWits, a weekly roundtable discussion on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Our panel includes Neil Riddell of the Altoona Mirror, Mark Brennan of FightOnState.com, 1966 team captain Mike Irwin, and Casey Kantz of WTAJ Sports. The NitWits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, a firm foundation for your financial future. Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Doctors Howells and Reed, orthodontics for children and adults. By the bookstore in the Park Hills Plaza, featuring the area's most complete selection of books, DVDs, and magazines. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona. Just ask rental. By Pacifico's Bakery, genuine Italian bread and rolls for your tailgating needs. By the Altoona Professional Hearing Aid Center, your hearing aid healthcare professional. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your cleaning needs. Your rehab choice, Health South Altoona. Ask for us by name. By J&P Auto, home of the $1,000 push, pull, or tow. By Courtesy Motors of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By the easy-to-use Big Book. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday. You can also see the NitWits on AltoonaMirror.com.
All right, welcome to another edition of the NitWits, joined by the crew as always. Neil Riddell, Mark Brennan, and Mike Irwin. Tom Bradley and players meeting with the media on Monday in advance of the January 2nd Ticket City Bowl. Brad's, of course, hoping that that interim tag maybe gets lifted at some time in the near future. And he actually confirmed, guys, on Monday that he has interviewed. Does he have a shot, Neil?
You know, I really don't think so. I think that they've been deliberate and really taking their time, and I think they're going to move outside, I would presume, after this game.
Mark?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of, when this show runs, obviously, is going to be considerably later than when we actually had media day and that sort of thing. And a lot of things could go down in the interim. But I feel bad for Tom Bradley because I agree with Neil. I do think they're going to go outside a house. It's just one of those situations where, to me, it's so toxic, and it's not that he's done anything wrong. And as a matter of fact, I think he's conducted himself magnificently under terrible circumstances. But it just would seem like the vibe that most people are getting is that they are going to go outside a house.
You know, I voiced my support for Tom Bradley in our last show, and I continue that because you think about the transition that they're going to go through. I mean, the players, the coaches, the recruits, the fans, I mean, it's a big transition. So I think the more they can keep some of those people in the program, the better off they're going to be. I mean, there's a lot of recruits out there hanging, and Tom Bradley keeps advising them to hold on to the decision made. And I just like to wait and see what happens. But I really think they couldn't go wrong with naming Tom Bradley at this point.
Well, from a personal point of view, I mean, I go back with Tom Bradley. We were freshmen together at Penn State. I think he's been the most media-friendly, fan-friendly coach that they've ever had. I mean, this guy returns calls to fans, he's built a real positive rapport. But I think this is more, eventually we all had to face the transition of the next coach after Joe, and I think that's part of this, Mike.
Well, I think the strength of the Penn State program has been the tradition and the support of the lettermen through the years. I mean, you go out there, I mean, even this year when they went out at the Nebraska game in support of the team, I mean, they have such a good group of lettermen and people that have rushed to the support of Joe Paterno and everybody else that have been involved in this tragedy. You know, I think the team is sticking together, and I think Bradley would be the logical transition. I mean, you get somebody else out of the program that we don't even know anything about, doesn't understand the program, probably doesn't understand the people. I mean, Tom Bradley and the assistant coaches probably know every high school coach in this whole state, and they have a natural way of attracting student athletes to Penn State, and they have a good rapport with most of these people. So I think you're giving up a lot.
To that point, is there anything to the notion that anybody that was close to this situation that they would need to look outside because of that fact? Is there anything to that? I mean, that's been brought up a lot.
Well, I mean, I think, this whole tragedy, the rush to judgment, I mean, they take the grand jury evidence, and it's not even contradicted by any outside influences and what somebody said. It's all projections at this point. So, I mean, I don't think we should, condemn the people that are playing there right now until we know the whole story.
Well, you've got a board member that is in charge of the search, Mike. I think you could take that up with him. The board fired Joe. Yeah, there was a media firestorm, but it was created because of the university's total ineptitude of managing a crisis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with Neil. And the other problem with this, unfortunately, is that who knows who knew what. I mean, Tom Bradley has not addressed the Sandusky situation in detail, and rightfully so. I mean, I'm sure he's been advised not to, but who knows what's going to come out and who knew what, when, and that's the one thing that I think makes it very difficult with that situation. Can the Board of Trustees afford to make a hire knowing that something could come out? Who knew what, again, when, and that's why I think they're going to make some sort of clean cut and go in a different direction.
And the other thing, Mike, that becomes problematic with in-house retention is where does it stop and start? I mean, could we end up with a situation that other than Joe and presumably Dick and Galen retiring, if you name Bradley, why shouldn't the rest of that staff be retained then?
Yeah.
Is that what you want to accomplish based on this crisis that you've dealt with?
Here's the thing that stinks about all of it is that, I don't know how this is going to play out, but I can tell you that the Penn State assistant coaches that I've dealt with are good men and good people. Mm-hmm. It's terrible that all this is ending this way, or may end this way, for them. And I think the fact that some of us think they are going to go outside the house doesn't mean that we think less of them, because I can tell you that there are some very good people there.
Well, I just don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater until all this comes out. I mean, why not name Tom Bradley if there's something down the road? But anything that Tom Bradley, the way I would look at this is all hearsay anyway. Whatever he heard from another assistant coach, he didn't witness anything, and I don't think you're going to find any of those guys witnessing anything. So their involvement is just on the perimeter, being involved with maybe Jerry Sandusky as a coach. And don't forget, Jerry Sandusky hasn't coached down there since '99, so there's been 11 or 12-year period he hasn't even been around the program. And we don't know what Joe Paterno did or what he didn't do, and all this other stuff is we have to wait till it proves out. So,
can you afford to wait a couple years? Let's just keep the current staff on. I don't think you can do that.
Well, no, I guess
do that. They wouldn't have fired Joe.
I just think it's a solid staff, and I'd hate to break them up at this point. Now, I think they could go outside and maybe get another offensive coordinator or someone, because Dick and Galen are getting older and probably ready to hang it up anyway. And the other guy,
it's a very solid defensive staff.
Well, okay, but the other guy that's name has been mentioned here that I think deserves a lot of merit. You probably won't agree with me, but Tom Clemens, the Green Bay Packer coach, because I think that's the type of guy they would need in the program that could really help out. From what I understand, he's a real class act. I mean, he graduated law school, magna cum laude, and he's a good guy. And maybe they could even pay him $1 million to be an assistant coming in as an offensive coordinator.
You never give Neil enough credit. You're probably already going to disagree with me before he can even talk.
I don't totally disagree with you, but so you're saying that he's made Aaron Rodgers. He has no recruiting. He was at Notre Dame for 3 years.
Well, he coached
Mike's
3
bringing
guys
him in as offensive coordinator, not even head coach.
He coached 3 guys that went to the Pro Bowl: Cordell Stewart, Tommy Maddox, and there's another guy. I forget the name right now.
Mike now has
Tom
information.
Clemens. No, and he's a Pittsburgh guy, and he brings a little bit of that with him. I mean, and I think he's a good, solid individual.
I think that they'll get a bigger name than Clemens, is my guess.
Okay. Well, we're due for a break, and we just talked about the difficult leg, an unfortunate leg, I should say, of this season in Happy Valley. But the bowl game is still on the horizon. Can a win maybe help the team and surrounding areas cope a little bit? We'll talk about it next.
The NitWits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, a firm foundation for your financial future. Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Doctors Howells and Reed, orthodontics for children and adults. By the bookstore in the Park Hills Plaza, featuring the area's most complete selection of books, DVDs, and magazines. By Fiore True Value, on 6th Avenue, Altoona. Just Ask Rental.
Hi, I'm Joey Sue, and you're watching the NitWits.
Welcome back to the NitWits, guys. We touched on it briefly in the first block. Been a very tumultuous last leg of the season for this team, and the ongoing Sandusky case going on. Is there any update as far as that's going? Mark?
Yeah, I mean, again, being sensitive to the time issues, you know, in mid-December, Neil and I found ourselves in courtrooms of all places. Who would have ever thought, covering the sorts of things that we were covering? But it sure looks for now as if the Jerry Sandusky thing, nothing's really going to unfold there as far as we can tell for several months at least. He basically waived his preliminary hearing. Tim Curley, Gary Schultz on the perjury charges were bound over for trial, so I don't think you're going to see a lot come out other than maybe some other people, you know, alleged victims coming forward. And I think you're just going to see that continue to happen, unfortunately, and that's going to keep Penn State in the news for some negative reasons.
And kind of getting back to where we were, I think that the wherewithal of the next coach. Now, the fact that he's going to be able to say, if it is an outside hire, hey, look, I obviously wasn't here. I don't even know the guy. I never met the guy. Yeah. But he's going to have the fortitude to really push forward to some of these negative headlines that are going to continue to come out probably through the trial.
One of the things that I don't want to say I've liked, but one of the things I think has been right is the fact that a lot of the focus has turned to these people who have been accused, to the Sanduskys and the Curleys and the Schultzes. You know, we don't know if they're guilty or not. Obviously, they're going to have their day in court. But it's not all Penn State, Penn State, Penn State. I think a lot of the focus, the negative focus, has been on some of the people accused of committing these crimes.
How about the situation that happened last weekend, as if this team really needed anything else, the post-practice fight between Curtis Drake and Matt McGloin, and Matt actually answered every question at Media Day on Monday. That was quite surprising, I thought.
Well, I mean, it was surprising, but it wasn't. I mean, McGloin's a guy who's never backed down from talking to the media about anything, and he's obviously not backed down from a lot of you know, scuffles and stuff. Yeah. I will say this, and I agree with what they were saying, that in any typical season, this would be newsworthy because of the way he was injured and knocked out by hitting his head on the floor, according to what he said. But it wouldn't be the huge national, gigantic thing that it became. I give him a lot of credit for coming out and facing the media, because I think he really diffused everything with his comments.
He did, but I also think that there has to be some measure of discipline. I believe that. I mean, he had to be able to walk away from several accounts. Drake had kind of gone up to him to maybe make amends, smooth it over, and that's where the quarterback of the team has to know that you have to smooth it over, and leaves them in a bit of a lurch, because I don't know that Bolden is really somebody that you would have a lot of confidence in the bowl game. I thought it was interesting that Bradley raised the possibility of Paul Jones, at least that he could play and not lose a year of eligibility.
Well, yeah, I think, you know, Paul Jones comes back into the picture now for the bowl game. I guess he's now eligible, and I don't know how well he's been playing in practice. I mean, McGloin, I would assume, is going to be healthy again for the bowl game, and Bolden has been the backup all year, so maybe they don't want to.
Jones isn't in the picture. I mean, he opened up a practice, and we were there for the entire practice, and Paul Jones took snaps only with a foreign team. And so if he's not taking snaps, this was before Christmas, in those final couple of practices with the first team, there's no way he's going to be ready to do anything other than spot action. I would think that if McGloin were unable to go, and I agree with you, Mike, I think he'll end up being okay, but I think you're looking at Bolden and McGregor and the Wildcat. Now, where do you stand with the Wildcat with Drake? You know, it's one thing with McGloin, who's not really had a lot of issues. Drake's a guy who's had some off-field problems, so do they decide to make a stand with him and tell him to finally grow up?
I think that would be unfair to Drake. You know, knowing what we know and don't know, I think McGloin was equally culpable.
Right, but it's the first time he's been in trouble, Neil, whereas Drake has had off-the-field legal issues.
All right, guys, coming up, we'll talk who this team's MVP is, and also give you some guys who flew under the radar yet had impressive years. Stay with us. You're watching the Nitwits.
The Nitwits are brought to you by Pacifico's Bakery, genuine Italian bread and rolls for your tailgating needs. By the Altoona Professional Hearing Aid Center, your hearing aid healthcare professional. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your cleaning needs.
Now back to NitWits. A roundtable look at Nittany Lion football.
Welcome back. Just one more game to go. What do you say we go back and recognize some guys who had some big years? Neil, who would your MVP be?
My MVP would be Still. I think he didn't play well the last couple games, so I think he was injured, but I think that defense was built around him.
I got to agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question Devin Still's the guy. In terms of some other guys that we can throw out there, I mean, Anthony Farah to me was a real, I don't even think you could call him an unsung hero because in so many of the games, he really stepped up and was big for them. And this after starting the season, in the doghouse, probably as far in the doghouse as you can be. He worked himself out, stuck with it, and here's a kid going back to Texas to play in a bowl game. So it's nice. It was nice to see the way he emerged from things.
He was a guy I was kind of debating as my unsung hero, and then I thought about it. I'm like, well, the way that kicking game was in shambles to start the year, and you're right with the way he was kind of in the doghouse. He really, really was huge for this kicking game. Mike, MVP?
Well, I was really hard on Devin Still last year. I called him Route 71 because I used to want to run that way. But he put the detour up. He put the detour up this year.
Straight through Altoona to your house.
And I would say because their defense is like number 10 in the country, and Devin Still was clearly the leader of that defense, that he would be the MVP. But I would say if you look at the other side of the ball and special teams, like Farah contributed an awful lot. So, I mean, could be an argument made that he was the MVP. And also on offense, a couple guys, I think Moyes played well, and I think he would deserve it on offense. So if you're picking an offensive MVP, you might be looking at Derek Moore.
Yeah, he kind of bailed him out against Illinois.
Yeah.
Red played very well most of the season.
Yeah, the offensive line I thought came around as the season went along. Obviously wasn't one of their more dominating offensive lines, but I don't know that was the reason they lost games per se. They did a pretty good job of protecting the quarterback. So there were some things about this team. You really wish for the players, had they not had to deal with the off-field stuff, that they had no part, they were no part of that whatsoever. You really wonder where things have gone. Could they have maybe ended up in that championship game? But, clearly that didn't happen.
Well, three really good teams beat them, so that's one thing. I think their leadership was good. Astorino, he was a kid that not all of us maybe thought was going to be a great player. I think he had a great senior year, and he was a real strong leader for them.
Yeah. Let's stick with that note and some guys that maybe had surprising years. Some guys that maybe surprised you, Neil.
Well, Hodges emerged as a star. I think he had potential. You saw last year, but I think he played tremendous. I'll be curious, guessing he's going to come back, but he might have at least check out his stock.
That was one of those moments in the year, Mark, where he had those back-to-back weeks of career highs in tackles, and I think we talked about him a bunch on this show this year, just how he was huge for that defense. He really was.
Yeah, and especially you lose a guy like Marty who he really picked it up after Marty went out. And, in terms of another little unsung hero, Nate Stupar, I thought, played well when Marty went out. This was a guy who was playing off the bench as a senior. It had to be very difficult for him, and I tip my cap, not only because he's a State College guy, and I'm from State College, but he did play well. Another guy, really, Jordan Hill, I think was overshadowed by Devin Still, but he was outstanding. And one of the real positives from Penn State Media Day, Bowl Media Day a couple weeks ago, he said he's definitely coming back. He wants to finish up his education, and he's going to be a real big part of their defense next year.
I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention McGloin, too. I mean, he brought him back how many times? I think he's really gave the offense more confidence. And
especially where he started from. I mean, he starts the season on the bench behind Bolden, and even when it was clear that he was outperforming Bolden, he didn't complain a lot. I say a lot, maybe a little bit, but he stuck to it and eventually became the starter, and I think did relatively a good job.
The other thing, I don't think the cupboard's bare right now. There's a lot of, they're outstanding at linebacker and defensive line, and a lot of these young defensive backs stepped up. Could probably replace some of the seniors that are in there. So I think we have a lot to look forward to. And I think the coach coming in has a lot of talent down there, depending on how they use them. But I think there's a lot still there at Penn State, so we're happy for that.
We are. Ticket City Bowl up next. We'll talk about it coming up.
The NitWits are brought to you by J&P Auto. home of the $1,000 push, pull, or tow. By Courtesy Motors of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By the easy-to-use Big Book. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday.
I'm Penn State's Chimo Coley, and you're watching the Nitwits.
Thank you, Chima. Back with our picks. The bowl game right around the corner. Penn State, University of Houston should be a good one. Neil, let's start with you, bud.
You know, I thought before the last couple weeks, and now the uncertainty with McGloin of whether he'll be healthy enough to play or how effective, I thought Penn State would really be competitive, maybe win the game, be able to keep the ball, keep Houston off the field. Houston's losing their coach, too. He won't be there. But I got to pick Houston. 26-16, I just think there's too much turmoil at Penn State for me to pick them and question how well they'll be able to concentrate.
I'll go next since I know we're saving Mike and you for the grand finale. I hate to agree with Neil, but I have to. You know, Penn State, I think under ordinary circumstances, I would pick them, be able to ball control real well, defense forcing turnovers. But given everything that's gone on, you know, there was a lot of disappointment over the bowl that they ended up in. Not that I necessarily agree with that because I think they're getting an outstanding opponent, probably the best opponent they could get. But I wonder if the players' heads are in the right place with everything that's going on. Completely understandable. I think Houston's going to win this 28-21.
I'll go next, Mike. Is that all right?
All right. Whatever you want to do, you're in charge.
Well, I think I'll agree with Neil to an extent where I think the quarterback situation is going to be a big question mark and the effectiveness if Matt McGloin plays or not. But I don't know. I think it's a good chance for Penn State to maybe right the ship, end the season on a positive note. And I do think Penn State's going to come out and get a 4-point win, 27-23. Mike?
Okay. Well, I always go with the Lions. I think it's going to be a great football game and one of the better bowl games. Houston's #1 in the country in offense, passing offense. They've really displayed it. But when you look at their schedule, there are very few marquee opponents that they beat. I mean, they lost the last game to Southern Mississippi. I think Penn State's defense shows up. Penn State's going to win. I'm going to pick them by at least 5 points.
Oh, you figured it out.
Wow. Took them all year.
we got a third. Go ahead.
I'll say 20-15.
20-15.
Real quick, I wanted to throw out thanks to Chris Owens and the staff, Brian, here at WTAJ, and want to wish you, KC, you've done a great job all year in your
Thanks, guys.
Rookie year. Merry Christmas to everybody, and
Happy New Year and everything
holidays.
else. Yep.
It's been fun, guys. We'll talk soon. Have a good night.
The Nitwits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, a firm foundation for your financial future. Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Doctors Howells and Reed, orthodontics for children and adults. By The Bookstore in the Park Hills Plaza, featuring the area's most complete selection of books, DVDs, and magazines. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona. Just Ask Rental. By Pacifico's Bakery, genuine Italian bread and rolls for your tailgating needs. By the Altoona Professional Hearing Aid Center, your hearing aid healthcare professional. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your cleaning needs. Your rehab choice, Health South Altoona. Ask for us by name. By J&P Auto, home of the $1,000 push, pull, or tow. By Courtesy Motors of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By the easy-to-use Big Book. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday. You can also see the Nitwits on AltoonaMirror.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.